Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're taking a look at a really fascinating puzzle, India's economy. Specifically, we're zooming in on a massive, multi-billion-dollar gap in the national balance sheet. But more importantly, we're going to talk about how to completely flip the script. We'll be mapping out exactly how India can leap from a macroeconomic deficit to becoming an absolute powerhouse trade surplus nation. It's a journey that weaves together deep manufacturing, green energy, and the incredible game-changing power of artificial intelligence. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. To actually understand the solution here, we first have to wrap our heads around the problem. Now, if you follow the news, you hear economists throwing around the term current account deficit, or CAD, all the time. But if we strip away all that dense economic jargon, what does it actually mean for a country to run a deficit?
Well, think of it like a really simple household budget. Say you earn 10,000 rupees a month, but you spend 12,000 on expenses. You've suddenly got a 2,000 rupee gap, right? And you have to finance that by borrowing. Scale that exact same logic up to the entire nation of India. The country earns money by exporting things like IT services and pharmaceuticals, but it spends a ton by importing oil and electronics. So whenever India buys more from the rest of the world than it sells to it, that overspending, that right there is the current account deficit.
And on a national scale, that gap is just enormous. Right now, India's deficit sits somewhere between -28 and $30 billion. That's roughly 1.3% of the country's entire GDP. Now, I know what you might be thinking. On paper, 1.3% sounds pretty small, completely manageable, right? But to truly understand the vulnerability here, we really need to look beneath that surface number.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is exactly what is driving that massive gap. We aren't just importing luxury goods for fun. This deficit is heavily driven by deep structural dependencies. Look at the numbers. India imports roughly 88% of its crude oil needs, which costs a staggering $137 billion every single year. Add another $85 billion for electronics and $45 billion for gold. We are heavily dependent on the outside world just to keep the lights on and keep the country growing.
Now, some folks might point out, hey, the US runs a massive deficit too, literally over $1 trillion. So why is it such a huge problem for India? Well, because we are talking about two vastly different economies. The USA is what you'd call a hunter nation, built on creating something from nothing. Their deficit is driven by confident, aggressive consumption. India, on the flip side, is a survivor nation, still recovering historically extracted wealth. So India's deficit is largely a subsidy compassion trap. Keeping 1.4 billion people fueled and fed requires massive subsidies on all those imported items. Long story short, India simply cannot copy the American debt-heavy model. It just won't work.
So who should we actually look to? We need to look at nations that are running massive trade surpluses. Take Germany. They run a 6 to 7% surplus by selling premium high-quality engineering. Cars, heavy machinery. China, meanwhile, runs a 4.4% surplus by selling massive volumes, but crucially, they own the entire value chain of what they make. For India to close its own $30 billion gap, it can't just pick one or the other. It needs a hybrid approach, a mix of high-value intellectual property, like Germany, combined with massive volume manufacturing, like China.
And that brings us to the actual roadmap to get to a surplus. We're going to focus on three distinct pillars today. First, the deep manufacturing shift. Second, the transition to renewable energy. And third, AI and the intelligence economy. Let's hit the first one. Pillar number 1, the deep manufacturing shift. Making things, not just assembling them. Let's take electronics as the perfect example here. India successfully assembles up to 180 million smartphones domestically. Sounds amazing, right? A real success story. But here's the catch. The actual value addition inside India is only about 18 to 23%. Why? Because we import 70 to 85% of the actual internal components. So we're essentially adding the final mile of value, but letting other countries capture the lion's share of the profit. The future absolutely has to be deep manufacturing. We need to move to 60% or more value addition by building the actual components right here at home.
To actually hit this surplus, we need highly actionable steps. First off, we've got to deepen the government's production-linked incentive, or PLI schemes, pushing them all the way down to the component level for electronics. And we need to do the exact same thing in healthcare by building domestic clusters for active pharmaceutical ingredients, or APIs. Right now, India is known as the pharmacy of the world, but get this, we import 65 to 70% of the raw materials for those medicines from China. Taking ownership of that full value chain is absolutely critical.
Moving right along to pillar number 2. Transition to renewable energy. This is all about the subsidy exit.
So the crucial point is this. When we talk about renewable energy in India, we aren't just talking about an environmental initiative. It is a direct economic weapon. Every single solar panel installed and every electric vehicle adopted directly chips away at that staggering $137 billion crude oil import bill we talked about earlier. It's literally the ultimate exit strategy from this endless fuel subsidy doom loop.
The steps to get there are straightforward, but they are monumental. Step 1 is the mass deployment of solar and wind energy. Step 2 is fast-tracking domestic lithium mining and locking down strategic global partnerships. This second part is vital. Right now, India imports nearly 100% of its critical minerals. We can't just replace our dependency on imported oil with a brand new dependency on imported lithium, right? That completely defeats the purpose. And step 3 is the rapid, nationwide adoption of electric vehicles.
And that brings us to pillar number 3, which is probably the most futuristic. AI and the intelligence economy, the ultimate leapfrog.
I want you to consider this really profound reality. AI is not just a productivity tool. It is a value creation accelerator. For a country with 1.4 billion minds, AI allows us to multiply our output exponentially. We're not just using AI to do the exact same tasks a little bit faster. We are using it to create entirely new high-value assets that the rest of the world actually wants to buy.
And this brilliantly illustrates the massive evolution that has to happen. For decades, the old Indian services economy was basically built on writing code for Western companies. It was a fantastic start, bringing in over $200 billion in exports. But the new intelligence economy? That requires Indian engineers to build global, AI-native products where India actually owns the intellectual property. Every single rupee earned from an Indian-built AI product sold globally is a rupee that the country does not need to borrow. It's a total game changer.
But to build this intelligence economy, we have to address a massive, glaring bottleneck, and that is the education system. Tracing all the way back to 1835, this system was designed to manufacture compliant employees, not creators. Think about it. It claims to teach problem solving, but it actually just teaches problem memorizing. It claims to teach purpose, but it optimizes for a safe, comfortable salary package. We absolutely must stop nurturing employees who just want to export their talents abroad and start nurturing risk takers who want to build right here.
And you know what? We have actually done this before. Think back to the Swadeshi movement of 1905. It wasn't just about boycotting foreign cloth. It was a profound psychological shift. As Gandhi's spinning wheel symbolized, it was about proudly saying, I am a creator, not a consumer. I produce, therefore I am free. Bringing that deep civilizational context to our modern AI and manufacturing goals, that is exactly the mindset shift India needs right now.
On a practical level, this means fundamentally rewriting the cultural narrative within Indian families and educational institutions. We have to shift the pressure from get a safe job to go out and build something valuable. We have to shift the ultimate life goal from go abroad to build right here. And we really have to transform the mindset from marks matter to solving real-world problems matters. You just cannot build a thriving innovation economy if your culture doesn't celebrate its innovators.
So, when you pull all of this together, the deep manufacturing, the renewable energy transition, and that massive leapfrog into the AI intelligence economy, the core thesis of this whole explainer becomes crystal clear. India's current account deficit isn't just a math problem on a spreadsheet. It is a value creation problem. Fix the value creation, and I promise you, the numbers will fix themselves.
India's demographic window, this incredibly rare period where we have a massive, young, working-age population, stays open until about 2055. The question isn't if we have the people, we've got 1.4 billion of them. The true question is whether we can build the ambition, the IP, and the manufacturing capabilities to match that incredible scale. The roadmap to a surplus is right there in front of us. The tools, like AI, are literally in our hands. Will we use them? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gave you a powerful new perspective on where the economy is headed next. Catch you in the next one.